Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another video. I'm immediately recording this after the test video I just did on Ponytown. This is technically another test because it's Ash's Town, I guess, but also not at the same time because I'm going to be explaining a little bit of lore for my show slash book, Fallout New Equestria. Now, is it actually new? Yes. It's not the same copied story that, a lot of people like to take. I technically took the original copy of the book and turned it into my own version. So the main hero of the story isn't really Little Pip, although Little Pip does have a big part into the movie slash show slash books. So anyway, the first character that I'm going to talk about is the character who is the main character of my books, Diana Dopehead. So Diana Dopehead is just your average pony. She lives in a stable, stable 17, and her lore is pretty complicated too. Her lore is that she was a child when she entered the stable and everybody was cryogenically frozen. However, hers specifically was rigged, so that way she would still be aging in the process of being frozen. Everybody else would just regularly be frozen. Eventually, raiders ended up coming into the stable and they murdered absolutely everybody, except for this one pony who was in the back rooms of the stable, who was in one of the cryopods. I want to note that there is two cryopods for later events for whenever I decide to actually explain that in the lore. Anyways, Diana wakes up. She realizes she's not a kid anymore. She doesn't remember too much about her past. And she leaves the stable to find out that everything that was in the past is completely eradicated, gone, never coming back. So Diana sets out on an adventure to seek out people who may know her. The first place she travels to is her house, of course, and she gets a holotape saying that some people know who she is and speculate that the house is the first place she's going to go to, which they were obviously correct about. And that's technically where Diana's story begins. She later on becomes a little bit different later on in her adventures. Eventually, she takes on the wasteland and makes her own wasteland form. So that's Diana. By the end of it, there is more events that happen after Diana's story. I'm obviously not going to spoil what happens to her, but after her story, the story continues 50 years later with another pony named Fidel Pinkberry. Why is Fidel Pinkberry necessary? Also, why is she on drugs? Good question. Let me fix that. There we go. That's better. Anyways, here's Fidel Pinkberry. Now, 50 years later after Diana's adventures, the wasteland eventually starts to get quote-unquote better. However, it actually isn't better. After Diana's sacrifice and saving the wasteland, she ended up purifying the wasteland in the wrong way. More creatures were brought to life in mating and stuff like that, so more dangerous creatures were made. And the existence of some creatures that weren't around as much before are around now, such as Deathclaws. So, Fidel Pinkberries starts in Stable 49, where eventually she's pretty much doing her duty on the job, but she falls asleep on the job, and she is the stable guard pretty much for the door. She ends up falling asleep, and her sister sneaks out. The overmare, known as Sweetie Belle, ends up calling Infidel Pinkberry and tells her that she needs to bring back her sister within a certain amount of time. Fidel Pinkberry tries to avoid going outside, but ultimately knows that that's what she got to do. So yeah, I won't spoil once again too much of the story since that's currently being written. Now the last one also takes place 50 years into the future, but kinda not. And that is with Coco Cobra. So, Coco Cobra, also known as Coconut, is a child. She is 6 years old. What pretty much happens is, at the beginning of her story, which also just so happens to be Stable 49, she ends up leaving. She leaves her sisters behind because she wants to be adventurous. She notices the door, leaves the door, and then bam, the doors close on her, and unfortunately there's nothing they could do for the 6-year-old. So the 6-year-old ends up leaving onto her own journey, and she meets someone named Flame, which is where she gets, the last name Cobra is from Flame, who is a descendant from their family tree who hasn't gone into the stable that they're specifically in. So what ends up happening is that Flame takes her to a safer place where she could stay for a limited amount of time for Flame to come back. Will you shut up, motherboard? I don't care. Anyway, what ends up happening is after that, she gets put into Stable 101 underneath the castle of the two sisters, the old castle, and she lives there. Until eventually the ceiling breaks and this pony in power armor lifts herself up, and it's revealed to just be Diana Dopen. And then Coco's taken on to Diana's journeys. Now, by the end of the journey, Diana doesn't want Coco to be killed or anything, so she does the same thing that happened to Diana in the way beginning of the story. So Diana throws Coco into a freezer, a cryogenic pod, and leaves her in there. Now, what happens after this is Diana's friends come back, and they collect this cryogenic pod, and they bring it back to Stable 49 years later. However, in these current times, there are 3 other siblings who are looking for their sister. These sisters would be Maya Cobra. Here's her design. Brooklyn Cobra. Here's her design. It's not showing it. Oh my god. And Pumpkin. So these sisters are all looking for their one specific sister, Coconut, who is pretty much just on a journey she's not allowed to be on, and she never ages because of the whole freezer thing. She stays 6 for 50 years. So in the future, eventually she turns 7 years old, but she's still a child. This child also goes on very adventurous decisions, we'll say, in the future, such as doing drugs. Yes, a 6-year-old who does drugs. Why does she do drugs? Well, it's to defend herself, pretty much. Just exactly how Fallout uses the drug system. So yeah, she uses it to boost her perception and boost her intelligence and maybe boost her strength if she has buff out. But eventually Coconut becomes a drug addict. And when Coconut gets older, which here's her design, she ends up getting the nickname Cocaine, because the main drug that Coco just so happens to use is cocaine. And her name's Coco. Coco, cocaine, yeah, I'm sure you guys get it. So yeah, she gets the name Cocaine. However, before any of this, there is a character named Darkheart, who is a part of the Brotherhood of Steel. She was just a lost soul chilling under a tree, waiting for family to ever come back and bid her up. Now, she is doomed with a curse that can never really kill her, so she's like an immortal pretty much, but only another immortal can kill her. And she's been sitting under this tree waiting and waiting and waiting, realizing that these people were never coming back because, well, the nukes. Eventually, the Brotherhood finds her and asks her to join the Brotherhood, and she eventually becomes Knight Darkheart. Knight Darkheart also runs around with her squire known as Pebbles. Let me see if I can pull her up. Known as Pebbles. And Pebbles essentially is just another knight. See, most squires don't get treated like good. They're like the servant, pretty much. Clean my armor, right? However, with these two, they might as well just both be knights. They just hang out together everywhere they go. The interesting part about this character, however, is she hunts down changelings, specifically changelings, and she eats them. So she cannibalizes her own kind because she is a changeling. And the reason why she takes on that form is because of Darkheart. Once she meets Darkheart, she pretty much starts mocking Darkheart to show that she likes Darkheart. Like, they're friends and stuff like that. So yeah. And then there's my favorite one to talk about some of the time, because this is the part where people get complex into the lore, although it already is kind of complex. Now, some may know that this is connected to Dummy Dopehead, and if you guys know Dummy Dopehead, you'll note that Coco, this character right here, is the mother of this character. So, in Dummy Dopehead, Coco is Diana's mom. However, in this story, Diana is way older than Coco. First thing I wanted to bring up is going back to that second cryopod at the beginning with Diana's story. That's a second Diana. Diana was cloned, and the original Diana was killed off. The same was done with Coco, and the same was done with every other DNA related to Jokester, just so that way this timeline can be possible. Essentially, if you guys follow up with Dummy Dopehead, the lore is the clown went back through the timelines, kicked a stone, and bam, she changed the timeline. That's why Fallout New Equestria is called Fallout New Equestria. She kicked a rock, and now the actual story of Fallout Equestria is new. But not just that, when it comes to Fidel's story, that's when the term new actually comes into place. This is still the wasteland of Equestria, but once Fidel's story hits, and by the end of Fidel's story, Fidel creates New Equestria. So that's the context of the name, but going back to Lady Cobra. This is not the mother of Coco. This is not the mother of Brooklyn. This is not the mother of Maya. This is not the mother of Pumpkin. They have the same last name, and they definitely are related, but this goes back to the clones thingy. Except, sort of, not really. If you go back to the clowns thingy, and mentioning the Jokesters and how they fuck up with timelines, Jokester just pushed herself into this new timeline. And there's two Jokesters that exist. One being Lady Cobra, who caused the Battle of Dodge City with the NPR, New Pegasus Republic. and ended up succeeding for the town's safety. And then there's the second jokester, who has been known to live in Diana's head, pretty much. When she's not in the head, she obviously looks like this, but in general, she looks like this. What happens is when Diana gets the red eyes, she essentially is this pony. Obviously, Diana still looks like Diana, but her eyes turn red to show that this is who she is now. She's Jokester. Jokester's taking over Diana's mind. And if you guys pay attention to the design, that's clearly Coco's mom. Like all you really have to do is just look at the design and kind of note, similarities. So yeah, that's essentially part 1 of the Fallout New Equestria lore. So I hope you guys enjoyed. This is a quick video. Just wanted to give you guys something to be interested before I actually start recording for the show. And to give you guys a little bit more context for the show. Some of this stuff isn't happening at the same time. So, spoilers a little bit. It doesn't actually spoil any of the actual show itself, but the spoiler is that this is going to have scenes where Diana's on screen, and then it swaps, and then it's Fidel on screen, and then it swaps, and then it's Coco on screen. The show's going to try to deceive you into thinking this is happening at the same time, but they're not actually happening at the same time. Most of the time, at least. But it's all because of the clown. That's the important part. If you guys want more context, I recommend watching my show Dummy Dopehead Season 1 and the first episode of Season 2. The second episode is just bonus content. But make sure you guys check that out. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.